Hey the Pyromaniacs, I've been meaning to give my updated thoughts on Marathon for a while now. The last time I really talked about it was immediately after its initial reveal, and since then, some things have happened. I didn't actually want to make this video until I actually was able to get a hands-on, feel of the game. I wanted to get into the closed alpha, but I couldn't, so I kind of ended up delaying this video for a bit, waiting for an open beta or something to come out, just to, kind of collect my thoughts and be able to come in here with a fully informed opinion on what exactly this game is, how it plays, all that good stuff. But in light of recent events, I felt like I might as well just give my thoughts now. But before talking about the big elephant in the room, I kind of want to just give my own personal thoughts on this game, not from the perspective of an average gamer, not from the perspective of a Halo fan or a Bungie fan, but specifically from the perspective of a fan of the original Marathon trilogy. Because for those who don't know, Marathon is a reboot of a trilogy of first-person shooters that Bungie made back in the 90s. And was basically used as a foundation for the Halo games. And I love the original Marathon trilogy. They're these really atmospheric and weird games with cerebral storytelling, and just takes place in this weird, dystopian, almost Lovecraftian sci-fi world. You can definitely tell that they took a lot of inspiration from the works of Arthur C. Clarke, Philip K. Dick, to just make this really just weird sci-fi universe that once again would eventually become kind of the basis for the universe of Halo. In fact, I think the best way to describe Marathon's universe is basically Halo on LSD. That sounds insane, but I really think, if you can imagine that, then you're about halfway there to how trippy Marathon can be, especially if we're talking about Infinity when they introduce, time travel stuff. So now we flash forward to this new Marathon game, which they're claiming is set in the same universe. It's not a reboot, it's not a retelling, it is supposedly a continuation of that original trilogy, which is bizarre because this game shares absolutely zero DNA with those original games. For one, this game has no single-player campaign to speak of. It is entirely an always-online live service extraction shooter. So already, this game does not look or play anything like the original trilogy of games. But even in terms of the world and the story, it shares almost no resemblance to Marathon. The elements that are lifted directly from the original games are more or less just flavor text and could very easily just be swapped out for any other generic sci-fi organization. I mean, they didn't even bother adding in the Four as an enemy faction, which is insane because the Four are the main enemies you're fighting in the Marathon trilogy. This is like if they made a Halo game without elites, jackals, and grunts, or a Mario game without Goombas and Koopas. Instead, it seems like mostly you're just fighting robots and other cyborgs. This really does just feel like they wanted to make an extraction shooter and just wanted to slap on a pre-existing IP for the sake of brand recognition. And from what we know now, that more or less is exactly what happened. There have been a few Bungie devs that have come out and said this entire game was built from the top brass of the company wanting a Tarkov clone, and not really listening to any of the other people at the company saying that's not a good idea. Because despite the push from a lot of different companies, extraction shooters are still pretty niche. But despite their niche status, there's a ton of competition in the market already, so any new games in the genre really need to have something to stand out. So they're already competing in a market that is high supply and low demand. And that should have been the first major red flag. That being said, Marathon does have one thing that really makes it stand out apart from all of its competitors. That being its art style and aesthetics. Because despite it not looking like Marathon at all, it does look really cool. While most other extraction games are just kind of military shooters with gritty, grungy aesthetics, Marathon has an art style that completely sets it apart, with this very clean, cyberpunk sci-fi aesthetic. A lot of it kind of evokes this style of Y2K futurism. Everything just has this really sleek and glossy look to it. It just looks really cool. Just in general, the art style is really unique and gives the game an identity of its own. So it's too bad for them that the identity is stolen. As it turns out, many of the textures in the game were lifted directly from the a portfolio of an artist who goes by the name Anti-Real online. And the funniest thing is the way that they got caught, because the smoking gun of all of this was the fact that in one of Anti-Real's art pieces, they hid a loss meme somewhere inside of it. And apparently, Bungie just took that art piece, put it in the game, and kept the loss meme unedited. So when people found the loss meme, that was it. That was all the proof that they needed that they stole these assets. Like, I've heard of instances of plagiarism in games before. For example, I think there was some drama with the composer of DBZ Budokai stealing tracks and putting them in the game. But this is the first time that I personally have heard of a high-profile AAA game on this level committing plagiarism of this magnitude. Because it really is just the entire aesthetic of the game was informed by Anti-Real's art. Even the assets that, as far as we know, were not plagiarized from Anti-Real, they clearly were still designed with them in mind. Now, Bungie did actually decide to speak out and say apparently there was a member of the art team that conveniently no longer works at the company anymore that sent in a texture sheet that apparently was entirely comprised of Anti-Real's work. They're currently performing an audit and trying to figure out how much was stolen and how much is original. But I just think it's really funny that whenever this sort of thing happens at one of these big companies, whenever some major scandal happens, it's always some employee that hasn't worked at the company in years. It's never the fault of people who are currently employed at the company. I just think that's a little bit interesting. It's just like, it's something really cool. Like, you just notice after a while. But yeah, it's crazy because even before this, there were already people who were pretty skeptical about how this game was taking shape. Like the fact that even as an extraction shooter, it's missing features that people would want. Like the fact that there's no solo queue, you're always going to be forced into a team of 3 no matter what. Or the fact that there's no proximity chat in a game that's kind of all about survival and being aware of your surroundings. Like, proximity chat is kind of a big deal in that. And then the fact that they're asking for $40 for this, when most pay-to-play live service titles bomb spectacularly. Like, if you want your live service game to even break even, you want it to be free to play so as many people as possible can get in the door. Even 343 knew that when making Halo Infinite. And they're 343, they screw up all the time. So even before all this, there was still this uneasiness going into this game. And now that it's public that this game is using stolen assets, I just don't see a world in which they're gonna recover. It was already kind of up in the air whether or not this game would even be a success, because apparently internal projections indicated that this game would have to be in the top 5 sales of the year just to be considered a success. Which, yeah, that's not happening. There have already been so many big hits this year and it's only May. Even without heavy hitters like GTA 6, there are still so many big games slated for later this year that have yet to come out. And even then, Summer Game Fest is right around the corner, so there's probably going to be even more revealed then. This game was never going to be a success. But after all this came out, I think it'll be a God-given miracle if this thing even breaks even. And now it's come out that Sony has rolled back marketing deals for the game, which could either signal that the game is getting delayed or potentially even canceled completely, which canceling this sort of game would just be burning money. And my mind just keeps going back to, why was this a Marathon game? Why did it have to be Marathon? Because when I think like a Marathon reboot, like a modernization of Marathon, my mind goes to like an immersive sim. Something in the style of like System Shock or Deus Ex. Considering the cool thing about Marathon compared to its contemporaries like Doom was that the levels were structured with objectives in mind. Instead of traveling through mazes and collecting keys like Doom, you're exploring these areas, accessing terminals, and completing different objectives. Very similar in nature to GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, which came out years later. And Perfect Dark is getting rebooted into an immersive sim. So from the jump, this was never supposed to be a Marathon game. And yet, it's going to define Marathon's legacy as a franchise because of just how high profile it is. When people think Marathon now, they're not going to think of the trilogy of retro hero sci-fi shooters with deep lore and cerebral narratives. No, when people think of Marathon now, they're gonna think of the derivative extraction shooter with stolen assets that nearly killed Bungie. Or did kill Bungie. The night's still young, and the industry is in the worst state it's ever been in. It's just crazy to me that Bungie is a company that was once upon a time defined by innovation. The original Marathon was the first FPS to have free look and mouse aiming. Myth was one of the first RTS games to have 3D rendered environments. And of course you have Halo, which was one of the first console shooters to feature twin stick controls. And you can even go all the way to Destiny, which popularized the live service looter shooter genre. You know, for better or worse, mostly worse. But my point still stands. Bungie is a company with a long legacy of pushing boundaries and trying new things. And yet here we are with a game that is not only a derivative trend-chasing cash grab, but a derivative trend-chasing cash grab with an aesthetic that is stolen. I don't think I need to tell anyone at this point that this is not the same Bungie that made the Halo games. Joseph Staten is gone, Max Hoberman is gone, Marcus Leto is gone. All the people that made Bungie left the company over a decade ago. And what we're left with are people that joined the company when they were owned by Activision Blizzard. And from the sounds of it, it seems like that Activision Blizzard culture still permeates throughout the company, like a parasite slowly killing its host. Even if Bungie gets shut down after this, the reality of the matter is that Bungie, the real Bungie, has not existed for a very, very long time. But with that said, thanks for watching. If you like this video, leave a like and become a pyromaniac yourself by subscribing. Until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.